Well, Sherry, I'm so glad for our conversation today, for the community to get to meet you and to kind of get to hear what you do, but really to learn from you, as a lot of us in the community, we're at different stages of building a business, and to kind of understand, as we build businesses, we need help, and how do we find the right help at the right time in those different stages. So before we dive into some of that, will you share a little bit about who you are and what you do?
So my name is Sherry Murtaza. I am a director of business development at EasyTeams, which is a virtual assistant service. And we're a California registered company. I've been in the industry for a good 9 years now in total. I've been running this company for 2 years. And prior to that, I've been an operations manager into different offshore projects, as well as being a virtual assistant myself in the beginning of my career. So I've seen both ends of the road.
That's awesome. No, yeah. And as the world continues, virtual becomes more and more accessible. It's a really powerful tool in building our businesses, but sometimes it can be one that's a little hard to navigate, especially I think for a first time. But even as people kind of say, "Oh, I had someone who did this thing, but can someone do this other thing?" And maybe sometimes as we get into it, I wonder, I think sometimes I even went in our conversation, I realized there were things that's like, "Oh, I didn't know a VA could do that." And
Yeah.
and so I'm excited to kind of maybe open wider what's possible for a lot of our community members as we jump in. So, but
Absolutely. It's
yeah.
funny, David. Most people
Mhm.
don't realize how much help they can actually get out of virtual assistant until they start talking about it. I
Yeah.
mean, there are too many unnecessary tasks on our plate that are not necessary for our presence to be in it or for us to do, like
Right.
admin work or follow-up calls, something that is just tedious day-to-day task, important, but not for us to do necessarily. So if
Right.
we have enough tasks, those can be delegated. And we don't really take out the time in our day-to-day to think about those that we can offload from our plate.
Yeah. No, I think so. Yeah, we just kind of think, hey, I got to get it all done, and
Yeah.
we're not
Prioritizing.
evaluating that, and yeah, and prioritizing, kind of triaging, go, oh wait, I'm the
Yeah.
only one who can do this, and a lot of times we think there's a lot more in that bucket than there actually is, you know.
Yeah.
But well, cool. Well, let's kind of jump into our different stages in the framework and kind of see, okay, how does this play out? What does this look like in each stage? Scalability is another kind of like adoption was a transitional stage from I have my sellable offer to I got my ideal month. Scalability is also a transitional stage where you're going from, okay, I have a stable, growing business to now I really want to own a position at market. And that next stage after that is saturation. So that's where you're like, hey, I'm dominant
Yeah.
in one aspect. So moving from a stable growth to market dominance takes a lot. Like it's a hard stage. And it's even what we encourage founders to really consider, like, because stability is not a bad place to stay, even indefinitely. But to go, hey, if you
Yeah.
really want to go and own it, you have to be ready and you have to do this intentionally. Because if you do it without intention, you might actually, crash and burn your business. It's a risky move
Yeah.
in there. But as you're going through this time and there's some reinventing, kind of some of the things you named earlier too of struggling with retention and recruiting. You're adding more people because you're doing more things. You're trying not to neglect the quality that you had before, even as you
Yeah.
deliver at a higher volume, but really you're moving. There's a lot of sales and a lot of delivery going on. So in this hyper kind of growth stage, where what should a founder be thinking about when it comes to outsourcing their talent and all the different functions of their business?
So a founder should also be thinking about not just adding good resources to the team, high-end resources, right? Because you need to really up your game. You've
Mm,
reached a certain level, now you need to get to the next level. You need more creative minds on each under
mm,
each domain. Now we're going to talk about departments. These domains, these department people need to be in a very healthy competition with each other.
mhm,
Because unless they're competing next to each other, the company can't grow.
mhm,
Scalability won't happen. I mean, I'm assuming there is a team, a marketing team wants to one up on the other teams, showing how great they did on their goals this month, right?
mhm,
And then the other team wants to show all the rest of the team how great they did. Now, this can be achieved through providing more benefits to your employees, adding some financial benefits incentives too. the tasks, right? Everything needs to be more organized, something that is driven through their motivation, but add quality resources to these teams then. You don't have to worry about if it's costing you too much, but get good resources, right? It doesn't matter where in the world those resources are. If they have the talent, hire them.
Hmm.
Creative minds could be anywhere on the globe. So don't um, keep yourself limited to the local hirings or people around you. You might be able to connect with someone, let's say in Pakistan, and you have a
Hmm.
really great, you like their creativity and you feel that
Hmm.
they can bring a lot to the table. They have a different perspective, a fresh perspective to was already being done, and they can be part of your team as well. So that's the time where you broaden your horizon, bring in great talent, you keep on the lookout for good people, even if you don't have a job for them yet. If it's a mind that you'd like to have on your team, get them on board because you've reached your break-even point. You
Hmm.
want to get to the next step, so that mind can be useful to you. So get creative minds onboarded.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, because you're creating something new as you're really
Yeah.
trying to, and that's again, it
Mhm.
is like scalability is very similar to that, some of those early stages, both of existential and adoption, because you're moving through in this creative path as well as
Yeah.
trying to deliver at scale. Um, and I like how reminding that it's like, I think there can be a bias to, oh, all the creativity is close and the execution is far away. But I appreciate that reminder that it's like, no, creativity can come from many different places. Um, and also, yeah, as you named, like, hey, these departments, these different areas, they're kind of creating their own culture and team identity, to really go, okay, how do we crush it in sales? How do we crush it in delivery? How do we crush it in marketing? Whatever those different spaces
Mhm.
are for a business, how do we crush it in product development? Um, I wonder, are there some, as if you're, when outsourcing, so when we're thinking about people who aren't co-located, as you've seen teams who start to get, you talked about going from 1 to 100 on your team. Um, it's one thing when there's 100 and they're all at least proximate, and so there's some of those other touch points that happen.
Yeah.
Um, when you have if you've built this team predominantly in a distributed way, what are some ways that you see founders kind of manage being distributed at scale, and to still keep the continuity, the alignment, the identification as a team? Um, yeah, how have you seen founders really manage that aspect when it starts getting just a lot bigger?
You need managers at that point, right? You need
Hmm.
head of each department, each domain talking to you because then as a founder, it's sad, but you don't have the time to talk to someone who's doing data entry for your company. It gets harder because your time is more limited. You
Hmm.
have more meetings, maybe you're doing more business development work, you're bringing in more business for your in a company as well at that time. It could be anything. So you need department heads, but what is important as a founder for you is to keep your department heads or your managers motivated enough for them to be able to pass on that message to their hires, their team
Hmm.
below. Because their team below might have chance to hear from the founder of the company once a month or twice, or like once in 3 months,
Hmm.
but they're hearing from their managers every day. So you need to keep a check and balance on your managers as well. Make sure they're accountable. There is a very nice little hack is run a survey, anonymous survey throughout your floors for each managers. Keep an
Hmm.
incentive on your manager's performance, but get their department people's views on their work, have them rate their work so that managers are motivated to do better and employees and they build a better relationship with your team because at the end of the day your managers and your other team members below them are the one that are actually helping you grow your business. They're the one doing the legwork for you now, so you need to
Hmm.
make sure that all of your employees are happy,
Yeah.
and that is a trouble. That is
Yeah.
gruesome. A lot of that process takes a lot of time, a lot of thinking, but it's important when you
Hmm.
want to make sure that your business grows. as you have like set really high goals for it. But at that time, you need to create those processes, things, keep your eye on some little things as well, making sure that your employees are not getting demotivated.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, as you're describing, and we know this, but I appreciate you calling it out of the role changes of the founder. And so the things that you do early change as you get into a middle stage and even here in scalability and then into saturation. It's like, okay, the keeping the direction of the company, the maybe especially in that scalability stage, some of the business development is a little more front and center for you. But also, yeah, it's maintaining the integrity and the alignment of these teams. It kind of goes back to what you said at the beginning of like, okay, how much is my time worth? Because my time is probably worth more now than it was way back I would have, counted it in the
Yeah.
existential stage. And not just in worth, but in like, hey, what really is most important? And so there's probably stuff that I would still have been doing in the sustainability stage that now again I'm like, okay, that needs to come off my plate and get
Mhm.
outsourced in some way if I'm going to
Yeah.
focus on these key things that we're talking about here in the scalability stage. And so it's
Mhm.
that's not a one-time process. That's a iterative process of continuing to come back and go,
Yeah.
okay, again, how much is my time worth? Oh, do I need to be scheduling my own flights? Probably not. And I think that can be hard for founders who, especially depending on where they came from and just their, personal perceptions of money and time and things where they're like, oh,
Yeah.
that feels so extra for someone to do those things. I can do it. And it's not that you
Yeah.
can't, but it's like, hey, no, you really just shouldn't. Like you have so
Yeah,
little
you shouldn't.
time and so many important things. You've,
Mhm.
I heard someone describe it in an interesting way where they're like, we think of it as like, oh, it's almost like there's a fear of being lazy by outsourcing those things, but in a sense, you're actually then,
Yeah.
if you don't do that, you're being lazy to not prioritize what's most important. And it kind of, for me, that kind of flipped that paradigm. I was
Absolutely.
like, oh, yeah, yeah, no, if I don't want to be reactive and lazy to what's most important. I actually want to be super intentional there. And so I need to let these things go. Well, as we kind of wrap up, Sherry, are there any other just things you'd want to say to founders, um, just to really kind of whether it's to yeah, to just guide, to inform, to encourage as they're thinking about how do they manage talent, how do they outsource, how do they offshore, how do they figure out, one of the things we talked about a number of times was how do they determine the value of their time? Like anything you kind of want to close with as we're talking to founders here.
Okay, so even if you've just started thinking about starting a company, or if it's been a couple of years in, or if you've reached the sustainability stage or the scalability stage, any stage you're at, do network a lot,
Mhm.
not just to grow your business, but also to you never know who you're going to run into, and they're going to say share an experience with you that is going to resonate with you and
Mhm.
help you grow or do things better.
Yeah.
So do talk and network with other business owners around you, one. And don't give up on your dream just because it gets overwhelming or if it feels like it's too much on the plate right now. Not
Mhm.
every day is going to be the same. It's going to be like 200% stressful on one day, and then the next day maybe is 1,000% stressful. Well, that's what we signed up for.
Yeah.
That's what we
No, that's
chose.
a good reminder.
So, yeah, and just give yourself a breathing time in between. Ask for help from
Mhm.
people. There's no shame in asking for help if you're someone who's new to starting their business, or if you've been in the business for quite some years, so there's no harm in asking for help. Ask for help from around business coaches, life coaches, therapists, anyone that you need. If you need a power group, power partners, anyone that you feel you can comfortably talk to those people. You'll
Yeah.
find a solution.
No, I appreciate that's a great exhortation, Sherry. And it really complements well with what we've been talking about of you're really it's again it's like okay, if I have this dream, who's going with me? Because we especially I feel like here in the West we have this kind of like Lone Ranger version of the founder that's like I know how to do
Yeah,
all the things and I'm gonna bootstrap and figure it all
yeah,
out and whatever method. But really, no, it's always a team, even when it
yeah.
looks like one person out front, it's a team. And so I
It's a team.
appreciate, even as we've talked about more on the internal, like, how do I offshore these tasks? But I love how you frame that in. It's like, hey, you also have a community that you're walking in this with, people who are speaking into that, people who
Yeah,
are encouraging, keeping you accountable, providing guidance. That
absolutely.
really, that when we think about team, it's a much bigger circle that we're drawing. Um,
Yeah.
so.
And we humans, I feel, are always a work in progress. If any one of us thinks that we're completed, we've learned it all, we're fooling ourselves. We're
Right.
constantly learning something new, and
Mhm.
the more we stay humble about it, the better for us, because then we'll actually reach out to people around us or try learning a thing or two, pick a thing or two from others around us. Doesn't matter if we're 20 or 60, we're constantly learning something every day. So we need to be just open to it and, embrace change.
I love that. Yeah, no, that's really good. Well, thank you so much for sharing with the community. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed getting to know you also and getting to learn more about. I remember our first conversation, it kind of blew my mind on how much was possible to offshore and even, how early in the journey it's like, oh, I guess I don't have to wait. I think that's often a pitfall that I know myself, but I see other founders as we coach founders like fall into is like, oh, I need to wait till here to start doing that. And just so, yeah, I think that's been fun that I've learned from you is just both how accessible it can be, but also like, yeah, there's so many more things, more ways that I can find the help I need than I realized. So I appreciate you sharing today, sharing that with our community. I'm excited to see how that helps them build new things that makes the world better. So thanks a ton.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, David.